The CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS. There is still 1 month left to take care of this quarter's PCGS grading specials. Submit 5 modern world banknotes and get 1 banknote graded free. Grading gold, pay only $35 per coin for standard and $40 for gold shield grading on valid U.S. coins. $10 Indians and Liberty Heads and $20 Liberty Heads and Saints. To take advantage of this offer, submit 5 or more coins valued at $2,500 or less. Be sure to write QS Gold when filling out your order. In this episode of the CoinWeek Podcast, Ancients writer Mike Markowitz takes us beyond Greek and Rome to tell the stories of the coins of the Persians, the Phoenicians, and the Carthaginians.
This is Mike Markowitz for CoinWeek.com. When we think about ancient coins, the first question that often comes to mind is Greek or Roman? For example, in coin auction catalogs, everything that isn't Roman is sometimes lumped together under the general heading of Greek. But many ancient peoples who issued and used coins spoke little or no Greek, and had little in common with the civilization of the Greeks. Today I'd like to talk about 3 of these rich and advanced cultures and their coins, which are especially interesting to many collectors: the Persians, the Phoenicians, and the Carthaginians. Let's talk about the Persians. Ancient Persian or Iranian coinage includes coins produced by 3 successive empires over the course of some 12 centuries, along with numerous semi-independent kingdoms. The first Persian empire is known as the Achaemenid Empire, which lasted some 220 years. It was founded by Cyrus the Great around 550 BCE, and was conquered by Alexander the Great in 330 BCE. At its height, this Persian Empire ruled over lands that include modern Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and even parts of the Balkans, Arabia, Central Asia, Pakistan, and a northwest corner of India. The Persians failed twice to conquer Greece, being defeated at Marathon in 490 BC and Plataea in 479. When Cyrus conquered the kingdom of Lydia in the western half of Anatolia in 546 BCE, he acquired the state that had invented and perfected the idea of coinage in gold and silver. Beginning with Darius I, who ruled from 521 to 486, Persian royal coinage was struck mainly at the mint of Sardis, the old Lydian capital. There were 2 main denominations, the gold daric and the silver siglos. The daric, named for Darius, was a thick, lumpy, irregular gold coin that weighed about 8.4 grams and was equal in value to 20 silver sigloi. The gold was very pure, 95% or better, and the earliest examples struck circa 550 to 485, which are quite scarce, bear the image of the Persian king kneeling to draw a bow and fire an arrow. The reverse was a simple punch mark. Later designs show the king running with a spear, holding a bow. These from 420 to 375 BCE, or carrying a bow and a short dagger. These from 375 down to about 340. Nice collectible examples of the derrick currently go for $1,200 to $3,000 and up. And there are some very rare double derricks that command very high prices when they appear at auction. The siglos, which weighed about 5.5 grams in very pure silver, had basically the same design. The bearded king crowned and running with a bow, spear, or dagger. Since Persian royal coinage lacked inscriptions and the designs remained consistent for decades, it's impossible to say which coins were issued for which ruler. Sigloi can be found for as little as $50, although these would typically be worn and often defaced with banker's marks or even test cuts. Exceptional high-grade examples currently go for $500 and up. In addition to royal coinage, many Persian provincial governors or satraps issued their own coins for their territories. Since the cities in some of these provinces were inhabited mainly by Greeks, these coins are often very Greek in appearance. A Persian satrap named Tissaphernes of Mysia may have issued the earliest true portrait of a living person on a coin, namely himself. The Achaemenid Empire, conquered by Alexander the Great, was carved up into kingdoms by Alexander's successors, notably the dynasty of the Ptolemies in Egypt and the Seleucids ruling in Syria, Mesopotamia, and Iran. In 247 BC, a new Iranian dynasty, the Parthians, emerged within the Seleucid realm. Based centrally in Iran, they conquered a wide swath of the Seleucid kingdom. The Parthians were skilled horse archers. They soon came into conflict with the expanding power of the Roman Republic in the east. In 53 BC, Parthians annihilated the army of Roman general Crassus at Carthage in Syria, and they captured a number of the sacred legionary eagle standards. When the Emperor Augustus negotiated the return of these precious emblems in 20 BC, he celebrated this diplomatic achievement on a famous series of coins that were inscribed Signis Receptis, the standards recovered. Parthian royal history, running from 247 BCE down to 228 CE, is a dismal record of sons murdering their fathers, brothers slaying brothers, to seize a shaky throne. Nevertheless, for most of this era, Parthia provided reasonably efficient government to a population of Greeks, Persians, Arabs, Armenians, tolerating Christians, Jews, pagans, Zoroastrians, and Buddhists. About 50 Parthian kings struck coinage in silver and bronze. There are no authentic Parthian gold coins. Initially, the silver coins were of very high purity, 95% or better. But by the end of the empire, the coins were being made of a debased alloy that was over 60% copper and other metals. The most common denomination was the dram of about 4 grams, inscribed in Greek. After the Parthians conquered the great Seleucid capital of Seleucia on the Tigris River, about 20 miles south of modern Baghdad, the mint struck handsome tetradrams, or 4-dram pieces, in fine Hellenistic Greek style. A popular rarity is the coinage of the sole Parthian queen, named Musa, who reigned from 2 BC to 4 CE. She was born in Italy as a slave and presented by Roman Emperor Augustus as a diplomatic gift to the Parthian king Phraates IV. She became his favorite. She bore him a son and then poisoned her husband, taking the throne for herself and her son. A few years later, she was overthrown by outraged Parthian nobles. She appeared on coins wearing an elaborate wedding cake headdress with the Greek title Basilissa, Empress. Examples of her tetradrachm in high grade typically sell for $3,000 and up when they appear at auction. Common Parthian drams in very fine condition can be found for $200 or less. The bronzes are inexpensive but usually well worn and seldom seen at auction. The highest recorded price that I could find for a Parthian coin was $39,584 for a beautiful tetradrachm of Orodes I, who ruled from 90 to 80 BCE. Parthia's decline is evident in the late coinage. The die cutters no longer knew Greek, and the inscriptions are a garbled mix of Aramaic letters and random strokes and dots. They were unable to model realistic portraits, and the king's image is reduced to a cartoon-like drawing. Similarly, the figure of a seated archer on the reverse, which was endlessly repeated on Parthian coins, becomes a crude stick figure. In the year 224 CE, Ardashir, the ruler of a southern client kingdom, overthrew the last Parthian ruler and established the dynasty that we know as the Sassanian Empire. Let's talk about the coinage of those sassy Sassanians. For over 400 years, the Sassanian Empire of Iran battled with Rome and Constantinople. It held off waves of invaders from the steppes of Central Asia, and it kept the Silk Road to China open. It maintained a stable currency in a multi-ethnic state, even though it was often racked by religious and dynastic conflicts. 36 Sassanian kings and 2 short-lived queens issued coins. Some are common and others are very rare. The most common type is the silver drachm, a thin, flat coin of about 4.3 grams. They bear the profile portrait of the king, wearing an extravagantly decorated crown. Each king's crown is distinctively different, which is helpful in identifying the coins. On the obverse, there's an inscription in old Persian letters that hails the king as Mazda-worshipping King of Kings of Iran, descended from the gods. Mazda here is not the car, but Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity of the Zoroastrian religion. The reverse depicts a fire altar, which was the focus of that state religion, and the altar may be adorned with ribbons, flanked by attendants and mushroom-shaped incense burners. The coins usually bear the date and a mint mark. Sassanian silver coinage is abundant. The 1967 Shiraz hoard contained some 37,000 drams, mainly from the long reign of Khusrau II, 590 to 628 CE. Hoards and stray finds of Sassanian coins have been reported all the way from Scandinavia, across the Middle East and Central Asia, even in China. And common types can still be found for under $100. A few Sassanian rulers issued very rare gold dinars of 7.3 to 8.5 grams. These may have been presentation pieces for the elite rather than part of the regular circulating currency. And when they appear at auction, they typically bring anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 and up. The high point of the Sassanian Empire came in the year 260 CE, when King Shapur I captured the Roman Emperor Valerian, the only Roman emperor ever taken prisoner in combat by a foreign enemy. According to legend, Shapur used Valerian as a footstool for mounting his horse and had him stuffed as a trophy when he died in captivity. A later king named Shapur II, according to legend, was crowned when he was still in his mother's womb after his father was murdered in the year 309, and he ruled for an incredible 70 years. For centuries, the Sassanians fought against the Byzantine Empire, and they even briefly occupied Jerusalem and conquered Egypt in the 7th century. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius decisively defeated a Sassanian siege of Constantinople in the year 626, but the long series of wars weakened both empires. In 632, Yazdegerd III, a grandson of Khusrau II, had the misfortune to be crowned the 38th and last Sassanian ruler, just in time for the Arab-Muslim conquest of Persia. He was about 8 years old. The last Sassanian army was destroyed by the Muslim Caliphate in 642 at the Battle of Nahavand. But for decades after the Muslim conquest, Arab governors in Persia continued to issue so-called Arab Sassanian coinage, bearing the images of long-dead Sassanian rulers. Now let's talk a little about the Phoenicians and their coins. A Semitic people living on the coast of what is now Syria and Lebanon, the Phoenicians were the greatest mariners and traders of the ancient Mediterranean. They voyaged out into the stormy Atlantic to obtain tin from the distant island of Britain, and a Phoenician explorer may have sailed down the west coast of Africa as far as Cameroon. The Greeks adopted their alphabet from the letters that were invented by the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians, in turn, adopted the idea of coinage from the Greeks. Now, Phoenicia was never a single unified state, but a collection of independent city-states. Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, Abydos, and a few of their far-flung colonies or trading posts on the shores of the Mediterranean. The dating of the earliest Phoenician coins is uncertain, probably about 450 BCE. These coins were all made of silver from mines in Spain or possibly Sardinia, or obtained in trade from the Greeks. And the weight system was based on the Babylonian shekel of 7.2 grams. Tiny fractions were issued all the way down to 1/24th of a shekel, which is about half a gram and 10 millimeters in diameter. The city of Tyre was built on a rocky offshore islet. Today it's the Lebanese city of Sur. It was connected to the mainland in the year 332 BC, when Alexander the Great built a causeway a kilometer long in order to storm and sack the city. Early Tyrian coins show a dolphin leaping over waves on the obverse, and an owl with the crook and flail symbol of the Egyptian pharaohs on the reverse, because the Phoenicians traded extensively with Egypt and were strongly influenced by Egyptian culture. Conquered by Alexander and incorporated into the kingdoms of his successors, the Phoenician cities became important mints for the very standardized coinage of the Hellenistic era. But in 126 BCE, Tyre resumed issuing its own coinage. These were silver shekels and half shekels. They were inscribed in Greek, and they depicted the city's patron god, Melkart, on the obverse. The Greeks and Romans identified him with Heracles. And on the reverse, there's the Ptolemaic eagle. Because of their high purity and despite the pagan imagery, these coins of Tyre were ritually acceptable to the Jewish temple priesthood in Jerusalem for the payment of the annual temple tax. And biblical scholars believe that they may be the 30 pieces of silver that were paid to Judas Iscariot. The town of Sidon, which today is the Lebanese city of Saida, about 25 miles north of Tyre, might have been the first Phoenician city to issue coins. Most Sidonian coins depict a warship rowing beneath the towers of the city wall on the obverse. And on the reverse, we see the Persian king holding a dagger fighting with a roaring lion. This very ancient image acknowledges Sidon's formal submission to Persian rule. The Persian navy that was defeated by the Athenians in the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC was largely manned by Phoenicians. About 40 miles further up the coast from Sidon is Byblos, now the Lebanese town of Jubail. One of the commodities that Byblos traded in was Egyptian papyrus. The city became so closely associated with the writing material that the Greek word for book became biblion, whence comes our word Bible. As early as 480 BC, Byblos issued coins bearing a sphinx wearing the double crown of Egypt on the obverse and a stylized lotus flower on the reverse. Again, we see that Egyptian influence. In the 4th century BCE, the kings of Byblos issued magnificent 2-shekel pieces showing a warship manned by helmeted warriors above a seahorse. Near the bottom, an inconspicuous snail shell appears, symbolizing one of the most famous Phoenician products, the precious purple dye that was extracted from a marine snail, the murex. The city of Abydos, or Arwad, is an island just offshore from the modern Syrian city of Tartus, about 52 miles north of Byblos. It began issuing coins in the late 5th century BCE, and the coinage shows the bearded head of the god, now wearing a Greek-style laurel crown, and a warship with an abbreviated inscription and date on the reverse. Abydos gained the right to issue its own civic coinage in 259 BC and produced a long series of handsome drams and tetradrams that closely copy the honeybee and stag design of its trading partner, the famous Greek city of Ephesus. Early Phoenician coins are generally scarce, but collectible examples can be found in all price ranges. Now let's talk about an offshoot of the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians. Most of what we know about Carthage was written by their bitter enemies, first the Greeks and then the Romans. They're described as greedy, treacherous, and brutal. Yet even Cicero, the Roman politician who was born 40 years after Carthage was destroyed, grudgingly admitted that Carthage would never have held an empire for 600 years had it not been governed with wisdom and statesmanship. We have coins for about the last 250 years of Carthaginian history, which was an era of war against the Greeks and the Romans. The Carthaginians adopted coinage relatively late in their long history, destroyed and rebuilt many times. The site of the North African city of Carthage is now a suburb of modern Tunis, the capital of Tunisia. According to legend, it was founded in 814 BCE by a Phoenician princess, Dido. For centuries, it was an outpost or colony of the great commercial city of Tyre. Carthaginians spoke the Phoenician or Punic language, and they wrote in a spidery script, basically similar to Hebrew, with the consonants only and no vowels. The name of the city appears on some coins written as Carthaginians, meaning new city. Carthage issued its earliest silver coins in Sicily about the year 410 BCE to pay mercenaries fighting for control of that island against Syracuse and other Greek city-states. Now, the art of coinage on Sicily in this period reached a peak of excellence that would not be matched again in Europe until the 19th century. And this so-called Siculo-Punic coinage, Carthage in Sicily, artfully combines the Carthaginian emblems of the horse and the date palm tree with the Greek-style portraits of lovely goddesses or bearded Hercules that are so familiar on the Greek coinage of this era. About 350 BCE, Carthage began striking gold staters, about 9.4 grams, bearing the image of a woman garlanded with wheat stalks in her hair. To the Carthaginians, she was Tanit, the goddess of fertility. To the Greeks and Romans, she was Persephone, or Kore, a goddess of vegetation and the underworld. The reverse shows a standing horse, and Carthaginian gold coins carry no inscription of any kind. To stretch their limited supply of gold bullion to cover the cost of their constant wars, the Carthaginians alloyed the gold with an increasing proportion of silver. These electrum pieces that were struck to the Phoenician shekel weight standard, about 7.5 grams. Initially, they were over 70% gold, and a century later, they were down to a very pale 30%, what we might call 8-karat gold. And fractions, including the half, the quarter, the fifth, and the tenth of a shekel, were struck. Totally destroyed by the Romans at the end of the Third Punic War in 146 BCE. Carthage would reemerge centuries later as a thriving, prosperous seaport, first Roman, then Vandal, then Byzantine, and eventually Islamic. In standard references and catalogs, the coinage of Carthage appears under the category Zugetana, because numismatic references are organized by ancient geographic region. That's why we see Athens listed under Attica and Sparta under Laconia. Zugetana is roughly the northern third of modern Tunisia. The highest price I found for a Carthaginian coin was for a massive 22.5 gram electrum tri-stater, or three-stater piece, dated about 260 BCE from an uncertain mint in Sicily. Less than 20 examples of this beautiful coin are known. Most are in museums. And in a 2018 Swiss auction, one sold for over $364,000. There's a beautiful silver 5-shekel piece, about 38 grams, from the same period, that bears a dramatic image of Pegasus, the flying horse. And nice examples of that coin bring as much as $100,000 at auction and up. Remember that the troy ounce, which is how we measure precious metals, is 31.1 grams. Although rare precious metal Carthaginian coins in high grade may be beyond the reach of all but the wealthiest collectors, the small bronzes and the minor silver pieces survive in thousands and are often affordable even in high grade. Very fine bronzes can be found for under $50, and collectible silver quarter shekels for $100 and up. Would you like to know more? The book Ancient Coin Collecting, Volume 6, Non-Classical Cultures by Wayne G. Sales, published in 1999, includes a comprehensive introduction to the coinage of the Persian empires and related kingdoms. Highly recommended. For the Phoenicians, the standard references in English include a 1910 British Museum catalogue, now quite out of date, and the book Coinage and Mints of Phoenicia, 1980, by William Betleon, which can be found for about $40. As you might expect, much of the numismatic literature on Phoenicia is in French. Standard references for the coinage of Carthage include the book Carthaginian Gold and Electrum Coins by Jenkins and Lewis, published in 1963 by the Royal Numismatic Society in London, and a series of important articles by Jenkins between 1971 and 1978 that were published in the Swiss Numismatic Review. For CoinWeek, this is Mike Markowitz wishing you good hunting.
If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. Remember, you can download every episode of the CoinWeek Podcast for free on the iTunes Store, stream it online on our YouTube channel, or on CoinWeek.com. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. Until next time, happy collecting.